Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the JD and Ferg Show. And of course, you already know it's JD and Ferg. Now, today's episode, we're going to break down half of the AFC West for you today. The first two teams that we're going to talk about this week is going to be the Denver Broncos and the San Diego Chargers. Next week, we'll do the Raiders for you and the Chiefs. Before we get started, though, I wanted to just go ahead and mention that this division this year, and I don't know if a lot of people noticed, is the only division in the NFL that has not one, not two, not three, but four starting quarterbacks that have been previous division-winning champs for a team. Okay, you have Peyton Manning, who has been an 8-time champ for the Colts. You've got Rivers, who is the longest tenured quarterback in this division, and he's had it 4 times straight.
Wow. Okay,
you have Palmer, who did it in 05 and in 09 for, of course, his prior team, the Bengals. And then Castle, who did it once in 08 with the Patriots, and then again in 2010 with the Chiefs.
Nice.
So something I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't really know. Now, as you do know, last year this was a tight division where 3 out of the 4 teams went 8-8 with the Chiefs following not too far behind them at 7-9.
Right.
So I don't know if this was a case of just that good of competition or no team really wanted to just come out and win.
Yeah, I think it's no team really wanted to get ahead because you had teams having little spurts here and there that were outstanding. Then they had spurts that were like, what the? Who are you?
Now looking back at all that, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stats from last year and see if between the draft and the free agency, the first round of course, if these teams did enough to kind of improve on what they did last year.
Okay. So, let's start off with the Broncos. Broncos finished out as the division champs last year at 8-8. And points per game, 19.3, which ranked them at 25th in the NFL. Yards per game, 316.6, which ranked them out at 23rd. Passing yards, a measly 152.1 yards per game, ranked them out at 31. Help. Rushing yards, 164.5, which took them to the #1 spot.
Thank you, Tebow and McGahee. That's basically them that did it.
They did it. Now, a sorry stat for y'all for the Broncos that you might like. It's quite interesting, I might add. Total passing yards for the entire season last year for the Broncos, 2,434 yards. Ouch. Can we... Help! They gave up 41 sacks while only getting 42 sacks. Turnover ratio of -12. Rough. Now I even broke down their touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns, 11. Passing touchdowns, 20. Punt and kick return touchdowns, 2. Defensive touchdowns, 3. There's some help. So while they were #1 in rush, they only ended up with 11 rushing touchdowns. Something's not adding up right there if you ask me. But yeah, they needed a lot of help. With that being said, let's go into their needs and what they did. They needed, starting the offseason, they needed quarterback, defensive lineman, wide receiver, linebacker, outside linebacker, offensive lineman, cornerback. They needed a lot, obviously. So, that's a lot of defensive stuff they needed. And tell us, what's the reason why they needed all this defensive stuff?
I'll go ahead and just put it out like this. 24th in points allowed. 20th in yards allowed. 18 of that was pass yards, and they were 22nd against the run. So while you were the #1 rushing offense, you weren't doing that good of a job at stopping other people from doing the exact same.
Or anything else for that
Or
matter.
anything else. Now, Champ Bailey's going into his 14th season. He needs help. Brian Dawkins, as we all know, retired.
Yep.
They did add Tracy Porter this offseason, so that should help them out a little bit on the defensive side. On the offensive side, you mentioned wide receiver. They lost Eddie Royal. Yes, they re-signed Brandon Stokely. We'll see if him and Manning can rekindle some of that old flame they once had.
That's an old flame.
That's very old. But they did, however, add Andre Caldwell, which I think is a good addition. And then at tight end, they did get Jacob Tamme, who, of course, Peyton Manning has some familiarity with. And then Joel Dreesen off of the Texans.
Good pickups. I like Andre Caldwell a lot. I like Joel Dreesen. Good pickup. Jacob Tamme, great blocker. Decent in the pass. I like Joel Dreesen for the pass much better. But with that being said, let's move into their draft picks. Their draft picks were fairly rough. Rough is a good way of putting it. Their first pickup was defensive tackle Derek Wolfe. Coming out of Cincinnati, his grade was complete garbage. Now, with this guy, he did get 9.5 sacks last year for Cincinnati. I just don't... With the grade of a 47.5...
That's a low grade.
That's a crap grade. And the worst thing about it is, he's probably going to start next year. That's how bad they are in that position.
Yeah.
In my
they
mind,
lost Broderick Bunkley is gone now, so they're going to need him to start.
I completely agree. Their best pick in my mind for their draft was the very last draft pick. Their very last draft pick in round 6 was Danny Trevathan. Sorry if I screwed that up. It's a hard one to pronounce. He's an outside linebacker, which they did need. This guy's pretty decent. He actually was their best grade, or second best grade, other than the backup quarterback that he picked up. But he graded out a 68.7. It's not bad, but for the position they got him in, pretty dang good. He'll actually start in the NFL. They picked up a running back, which they're probably going to need because No Sean is still no-show. And they got rid of Tim Tebow, their second best rusher.
And while McGahee rushed for 1,199 yards for a 4.8 yard per carry average, he did start breaking down towards the end of the year because of that age. So they are going to need Ronnie Hillman to come in and be that change of pace back because, again, he's going to start breaking down, and No Sean Moreno just cannot stay healthy.
No show is still going to no show, plain and simple. Now, with their second pick, this one had a lot of controversy for going as early as it did and what have you. My mind, I ain't going to lie. I actually like it. Honestly, it doesn't matter what quarterback you take. You put him behind Peyton Manning and one of your other coaches just happens to be John Elway. You stick him behind those two for the next 3 to 4 years. I don't care who it is. That guy better be Hall of Fame material by the time Peyton retires. But they ended up picking up Brock Osweiler. This man is tall. 6'7", 242 pounds. That's a big boy out of Arizona State. He graded out at an 83.5, which is pretty dang decent. Second round might have been a little early, but what the heck.
And something a little interesting about Osweiler, he actually beat out John Elway's son at Arizona for a starting job at
That's
quarterback.
true. And that's a funny stat. I like that one. While he was in his college, let's just go there. 63.2% completion rate. That's with 516 attempts. It's a lot of attempts, and that's a pretty dang good ratio. He actually he ended up with 4,036 yards, 26 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. With that being said, there was no tight end, no running back, and no wide receiver from Arizona State that made it in this year's draft. None of them were taken. And there were a couple of them there, and guess what? None of them were taken after the draft as well. So I'm guessing he didn't have much to work with. The guy must have done something right. So the guy's got some, he is a project, but he's definitely got some dang good attributes. So keep an eye on this guy 3 to 4 years down the road whenever Peyton leaves. Possibly one hell of a prospect, and should be one hell of a prospect in the end, being behind with those two quarterbacks.
Now, with what they've done so far, what do you feel that the Broncos still need before we move on to the Chargers?
Okay.
Because personally, I feel like another strong wide receiver and another strong running back, because there are a lot of veteran running backs that you could add to that depth chart as well.
Yep.
To that roster.
There is some good running backs out there. There's some good wide receivers out there. There's definitely quite a few to choose from. In my mind, I ain't gonna lie, I'm putting all my money in this second free agency coming up. I'm putting all my money on defense. They need defensive people desperately.
That is true.
Fill the slots that you need help in, and trust me, there's a lot of help to be needed there.
All right, and moving on now to the Chargers, who made a lot of offensive moves.
Yeah,
They did lose Mike Tolbert and Vincent Jackson this offseason, which I personally feel those are two big-name players for a reason. And they're probably players that you should have tried a little harder to keep. We know that Vincent Jackson has been problems wanting that contract, and he eventually, didn't get it. So now he's a Buccaneer, and Tolbert is a Panther now to add to that deep running back squad that they have there.
That's a deep running back squad, I just want to add. But let's get back to the Chargers. With the Chargers, let's go to their stats to start this one off with. Points per game, 25.4. Ranked number 6th in the NFL. Yards per game, 393.1, ranked 6th in the NFL. Passing yards per game, 276.6, 6th in the NFL.
And let me just pause you for 1 second.
Sure.
Yes, that's with Phillip Rivers throwing for, 20 interceptions this last season?
Rough. Great
Still
job.
a top 10 passing defense,
No
or
doubt.
offense, sorry.
Yeah, for what he had, did great. Injuries that they had, did great. Their offensive line sucked, so he did great. Rush yards per game, 116.5. 16th. We're keeping with the sixes. They allowed 32 sacks, and while only getting 30 sacks last year. Now let's break down their touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns, 16 touchdowns. Passing, 27. Punt and kick return, 1. Defensive, 2. -7 turnover ratio. -7 ain't so hot. There's a lot of things in there that aren't so hot. Now, with the whole Tolbert and the rushing touchdowns and stuff like that, I just want to break this down because I think this is quite interesting as well. Matt Ryan had 222 carries with 1,091 yards, 4.9 average.
Good average.
6 touchdowns. Rushing. Passing touchdowns for Matt Ryan, 0. Mike Tolbert, 121 carries, 490 yards with an average of 4.0. 8 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in receiving with a total of 10 full touchdowns. Now, I will say this. The reason why he's only at a 4.0 average is because he was their third down back and their goal line guy. So when you only got a yard or 2 to rush for the goal line.
And they definitely used him more passing than they would Ryan Mathews.
Agreed. So that's where that breaks down. Hence the reason why we feel like Tolbert was a bad guy to get rid of, because he did exactly what you want him to. And damn good.
And for that receiving squad, to make up for the loss of Vincent Jackson, they went and got a plethora of wide receivers to add to their roster to see if something will stick. I mean, they picked up Robert Meacham, who we know has got the potential.
Definitely.
He was fighting for a lot of catches over in New Orleans. He's probably I think he's the only receiver that left New Orleans even. They picked up Eddie Royal from Broncos, Roscoe Parrish, and also Michael Spurlock. I know those aren't real big household name receivers,
That's a plethora.
but it is a good amount of receivers to pull in and say, let's see what you can do.
I agree completely.
On the defensive end, they were 22nd ranked defense. That has to improve.
It better.
Now, a cornerback is one need that they didn't meet in the draft. There's a rumor that they might be getting Drayton Florence back now that the Bills have released him, which we know the Chargers drafted him in 03. So let's see if that plays out good and could fill another need for this team. Linebacker was another need, and of course, Melvin Ingram, even though he was a defensive end, is being converted to linebacker, from what I hear, which I think he'll fill that void very nice at 6'1", 264 pounds. He graded out at a 90.5 grade.
Guy's a freaking beast.
And then their second round pick, who I happen to like a lot, and again was another need. It was a defensive tackle by the name of Kendall Reyes. And this kid is 6'4", 299 pounds. And he graded out at an 84 grade as well.
Yeah, he's a great pickup as well. I completely agree. Here's some of their stats from last year. Hopefully those guys improve these, which I'll delve into that just a hair bit more. All right, so Melvin Ingram. He was a defensive end, getting switched to possibly to a linebacker. Good decision. He's out of South Carolina. Guy had, 10 sacks last year, 2 interceptions, ran the 40 in 4.79. It's fast for a big boy. And by the way, here's a little tasty tidbit that you just gotta love. Gotta love. I don't know where I found this. I dug this out of like the back hole, but check this out. Melvin Ingram last year for South Carolina rushed, I did say rushed, the ball twice. For these stats, I don't know why he only rushed twice, but he rushed the ball twice. Like literally, they handed off to him and he rushed like a running back. He played running back for 2 plays. So he rushed the ball two times, 87 yards combined on those 2 tries, 43.5 average with a 1 touchdown. Are you kidding me? This man can do it all. Sign him up. He's gold. Reyes, the guy's a monster. He ended up with 4.5 sacks last year. He was with Connecticut. Yeah, good division. He had a lot of people around him. He was fighting for some stuff. So 4.5 for him was pretty good. And he is a defensive tackle, so he's right there in the center. He's supposed to be stopping the run, and he was top notch at it. Now, some of the other ones that they picked up an Antonio Gates lookalike, tight end in the draft. He's like 6'6", 238. I swear to God, he looks just like Antonio Gates. I mean, you can match him up points for points almost. It's crazy. You know, that's about the best of their draft, I can honestly say. You know,
the first 2 picks are going to be immediate impact players for this team, though.
Definitely. They still got a few holes that they got to try to get around because they got nothing for cornerback. They didn't pick up nothing for cornerback. But we did say they're trying to get Flores. Linebacker. They're trying to switch Ingram into linebacker, which they need a linebacker, which may hurt them a little on the defensive lineman side. But you got to do what you got to do.
All right. Well,
that's it, baby.
With that being said, that's all the time that we have for today's show. So tune in next week where we're going to go ahead and break down for you the Kansas City Chiefs and the Oakland Raiders to cap off the AFC West. And then after that, we'll move on into another division for you. Like I said, from here to the start of the season, we're going to go ahead and do this with every single division, 2 teams each week, just so you guys can get an idea of what your team has done. And until next time, subscribe, share, and show that you care.